Nintendo's been making video games for a long time now, and they've had several brilliant creations over this length of time that have solidified them as one of the giants of the industry. But as you'd expect, not all of their creations have been masterpieces, to say the least. When it comes to characters, Nintendo has some of the most iconic of all time under their belt, the likes of Mario, Link, Pikachu, Peppy Hair, etc. But at the same time, there have also been many characters that had controversial aspects to them that led to their censorship by the company. These are their own creations that either regionally or in a worldwide fashion had to have certain aspects changed due to fan outcry or a media meltdown. And man, am I looking forward to going back in time to talk about 10 of these characters today. Nintendo, not so much. I'm going to be discussing some pretty controversial topics here, so strap yourself in and get ready to relive 10 times Nintendo had to censor their own characters. Coming in at the number 10 spot is a fairly recent censorship on the part of Nintendo, this being to Mr. Game & Watch in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Many of you may have heard of this one, but you may not know the full extent of the incident and Nintendo's true intentions behind what happened here. To give a full background of the story, Mr. Game & Watch, like most characters transitioning from one Smash game to the next, underwent some moveset changes going from Smash 4 into Ultimate. Game & Watch's forward smash in Smash 4 was swinging a flaming torch as a reference to the 1982 Game & Watch title Fire Attack. The decision to reference this game was a very questionable one, considering that the game involves you playing as a cowboy to stop the attackers who are clearly based on stereotypical Native Americans. The choice to include a move from this game was made for Melee back in 2001, so it isn't really the fault of Smash 4 for carrying the move over, but in Smash Ultimate someone, and I don't know who in particular, but someone decided that they shouldn't remove this reference, that they shouldn't even just simply keep it in as an innocent seeming flaming torch attack from the perspective of those who weren't familiar with the origins. No. They decided, how about we double down on the reference and make it even more apparent for those who were unaware of what this was intended to be. In Pikachu's showcase trailer in the lead up to Smash Ultimate's release, Game & Watch now had a native feather on his head. Oh my. To some at the time, they got upset about everyone making a big deal over a feather. Why is there so much uproar over this, they asked. Well, the truth is, most of the backlash wasn't simply targeting the feather, that was simply a symbol of what Nintendo and the team working on Smash were going for with this reference. Reinforcing a stereotype that doesn't paint Native Americans in a good light isn't necessary in a Smash game whatsoever, and there were plenty of games in the Game & Watch that didn't have any potentially offensive material in them that a different forward smash could have been drawn from. But if Nintendo felt that it was really necessary to have this flaming torch attack in Game & Watch's moveset, then at least keep the feather reference out of it. There was fan and PR backlash and the feather was promptly removed. It was a good call on Nintendo's part to censor this because something seemingly very simple could have had a negative impact on some players' experiences. Next up at number 9, we have Vivian from Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. She's a pretty popular character from the game to the point where she would get a cameo in Super Paper Mario as well as sticker and spirit appearances in both Smash Brawl and Ultimate, respectively. And for those who haven't played through this highly regarded Mario RPG, they may be familiar with why she would have some controversial connotations, and this would have to do with her gender identity being changed between localizations of the game. To give some context around the character and some story details from the Thousand-Year Door, Vivian used to work for a villainous organization alongside her sisters, but when she leaves the Shadow Sirens and joins up with Mario and the crew, her sisters begin to mock her. In the English localization of the game, Vivian is portrayed as a cisgender female and is mocked for her appearance. This is wildly different from what happens in the non-English versions though, oh boy. Vivian in all other versions is revealed to have been born a male but has made a transgender transition into living as a female and is instead mocked for that by her sisters instead of the standard, oh, your ugly ribs that she was getting in the English versions. And yeah, Nintendo for one reason or another wasn't comfortable with this type of material and insults coming for the English versions. It's unclear what the exact motive was for this decision. Potentially Nintendo didn't want members of the transgender community to get offended by the characters hurling insults like this in the game, but that may not be it because many in the community see Vivian as an inspirational character because of how she overcomes this abuse. Maybe Nintendo didn't even want to go into the gender identity area in this game, considering that times were quite a bit different in 2004 than they are today, in more ways than one. Coming in at the number 8 spot, we have a character from the Punch-Out series. Who is this character? Well, I mean, I can almost choose anyone, right? Alright, fine, I'll settle on one. Let's talk about Soda Popinski. Initially appearing in Super Punch-Out in 1985, this character is meant as a Russian stereotypical boxer. Now, there doesn't seem to be anything inherently controversial about the origin of the character compared to the others in the cast, since Punch-Out seems to create stereotypes for almost every country out there. Shoutouts to my boy Bear Hugger. Best character. Soda Popinski, instead of fighting out of good old Salmon Arm BC, fights for the USSR in Moscow and is the third character that you fight in the game. He would then go on to appear in Mike Tyson's Punch-Out and then Punch-Out Wii, but hold on a minute. Wasn't this character supposed to have been censored somewhere? Oh yeah, did I fail to mention that this character's name wasn't always Soda Popinski? Now, I mean, do you really think Nintendo was designing this character as a reference to too many Russians drinking pop? Well, that certainly wasn't their intention. Nintendo thought it would be a funny idea to associate the Russian boxer with being an alcoholic who could not stop drinking his vodka. Now, I get one of the origin countries for this beverage was Russia, but come on, did you have to make this the basis for his character? We got a lumberjack who makes friends with bears. An innocent jab at our country, but not too far from reality. Anyways, this original concept for the character led to the name of Vodka Drunkinski, and when it was realized that, hey, maybe this isn't the best idea, he was renamed to Soda Popinski, and I love how the image of him drinking a bottle of straight vodka was replaced with pop, and they just plastered the logo right on top of it. My god, this company. It was a good call in my opinion to censor this because obviously from a promotional standpoint, the game would now be a lot more accessible to all audiences, including some who, you know, aren't supposed to be drinking. Coming in at the number 7 spot, we don't just have one character. We have multiple characters who are both censored in the same game for the same reasons. The characters Mithra and Camilla, while being from completely different franchises with completely different backstories and personalities, that kinda all goes out the window when you objectify them by one attribute, their assets. While being prominent on both characters with some skin being exposed, but obviously not too much to avoid their games from turning from innocent Nintendo titles to something else entirely, it still wouldn't be so bad as to not have them appear in the Spirit role in Smash Ultimate, right? Well yeah, you'd be right. Well, sort of. You see, Mithra and Camilla do make appearances as spirits in Smash Ultimate. Well, actually, not all of them technically makes an appearance. These particular areas on both characters are covered in black very awkwardly in Smash Ultimate. There appears to have been a black cloth put over both characters, and it's very apparent to someone who may not even be familiar with how the characters are originally portrayed in their games that something isn't exactly right here. The reasoning for this is pretty obvious, and it's the desired age rating for Smash Ultimate. The game ended up with a North American E10 Plus rating, which clearly had something against this part of the body being shown in any capacity. Now, Pyra has a spirit in Smash Ultimate, which is somewhat revealing as well, however, it's the part of the body in question that appears to be the biggest issue here. This is also likely another reason for why Mai wasn't included as a background character in Terry Bogard's stage. She clearly wasn't the only character who wasn't appropriate for, quote, good boys and girls. Coming in at the number 6 spot, we have Sheik from the Legend of Zelda series. I'm going to be spoiling Ocarina of Time here, and yes, this warning is obviously warranted due to this being a very recent game, and it's not like Nintendo spoiled it themselves at any point, so yeah, Sheik is Zelda. Big shocker, I know, right? But is Sheik just Zelda in disguise, or was there something more going on here? In the Legend of Zelda fanbase, there's been a long-standing debate about Sheik's gender. This is because Nintendo's official source on the subject has changed significantly over time. In the original Ocarina of Time, Sheik is referred to frequently by characters with male pronouns. An example of this is when Princess Ruto states that Sheik is a, quote, young man. Is this because she was simply confused by the disguise? Seems unlikely, since in the official Ocarina of Time player's guide, Sheik is also described as a male. And also, if you look at Sheik's physical appearance in Ocarina of Time compared to now, and I mean, come on, you've gotta notice that there's a difference here. This is because the choice for what gender Sheik would be seems to have been retconned since her first in-game appearance. And I say her because in almost every appearance since then, Sheik has been described as female. As stated by Bill Trinan in 2014, Sheik is simply Zelda in disguise, and because of that, Sheik is female. However, this clearly was not the original intention for the character, as it likely involved Zelda undergoing a full-on gender transformation rather than simply changing into a different outfit. There have been various reasons given since the censorship of the character's original gender, and one of the main ones provided by Aonuma is that according to surveys, American players preferred more independent female characters and used Sheik and Tetra as examples of this. Based on this, perhaps the philosophy behind the decision was that why should Zelda have to turn into a man in order to become more powerful? What message does that send to the female audience? Alienating a large demographic obviously didn't make much sense. If that was the reasoning, then I support the idea to have the character's gender changed going forward, although it is kinda weird going back to play Ocarina of Time when this character is obviously referred to very differently than she is now. For the number 5 entry on this list, we have a duality of characters who were censored in different games for the same reason, but over 20 years apart. Yes, I'm serious. The first of the two is Bowser in Super Mario RPG, which released in March of 1996, and the second is Inkling Girl from her appearance in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe in April of 2017. Had this type of incident just happened once, I would have maybe considered leaving it off the list, but since it happened twice, and one time was very recently, it proves to me that the key factor in this is that Nintendo did not learn their lesson the first time. I might be blowing this a little out of proportion though, since the action shown in question isn't overly major, but it is something that could be construed as offensive. Basically, in both of the games, Bowser and Inkling respectively are shown in celebrations, giving an up yours gesture of sorts. Obviously, this can be interpreted as offensive by some, and when you've got games which have kids as one of the main demographics to be buying them, you obviously wouldn't want them going around trying to celebrate like Bowser and Inkling, not knowing what they're doing isn't perceived too well by most in the general public. And when they get asked where'd you learn that from and they point to these innocent seeming Nintendo games, there could obviously be some angry messages and bad PR sent their way. This is why in the international releases of Mario RPG, Bowser is no longer shown doing this gesture, and Inkling's gesture in Mario Kart was patched out right away. A good call on both ends by Nintendo to save themselves from some potential backlash about something that seems relatively minor on the surface, but in the end obviously doesn't serve much of a purpose in games like these. Coming in at the number 4 spot on this list is Lin Li from Xenoblade Chronicles X, and oh my, if you aren't too familiar with this game, I'm going to fill you in on what Nintendo did here, and shed some light on the difference between what's acceptable in Japanese game releases compared to the rest of the markets this game would be releasing in. Lin, in the Japanese version, is a 13-year-old character from a game that features the ability to change the outfits of the characters in your party, and yeah, need I say more? Trust me, if you really want me to go into detail, strap yourself in. Lin can be dressed in a pretty revealing bikini outfit, which is obviously way out of line for a character this young. To me, it's ridiculous how this got to pass in Japan, and some changes obviously had to be made for the Western release of Xenoblade Chronicles X. In order to make this character more appropriate for a new audience, the change was made to make Lin 15 instead of 13, which I mean, okay, it's not making things worse, I guess, but we know that that alone wouldn't solve everything. This is why for that outfit, black clothing has been placed underneath the top, and the bottoms have now been replaced with shorts. Now don't get me wrong, there can definitely be some places in games for a little bit of risque content when you're targeting a teen market, M market, whatever it may be. After all, this is the same game that gives you an option to adjust your character's bust size, okay? Like, there are some instances where it's not that bad, but there's absolutely no reason, none, to give an option to have a character this young an outfit like this. There's no excuse for it. It's disturbing to me that it's still around in the Japanese version, and I know the way cultures perceive things is different, but come on, she was promoted to be 13, man, and that definitely needed to be censored, so I'm very glad Nintendo rectified this with the localizations at least. Coming in at the number 3 spot on the list is Birdo. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of you are waiting for this one, and for good reason. Birdo is like the Sheik and Vivian situations, but a lot stranger and with even less coherence as to what the official gender decision was made to be. So I'm sure many of you are aware of how Birdo was initially introduced to the Mario franchise. In Super Mario Bros. 2, Birdo appears as a boss that you take on in the game, but nothing much more than that can be derived from that one experience. The real backstory behind the character can be found in the manual for this game. In the North American manual, the exact quote is, "He thinks he is a girl and he spits eggs from his mouth. He'd rather be called Birdetta." And since that time, there have actually been many sources that still refer to Birdo with masculine pronouns, even in English. I can't go over every single example for obvious reasons. I mean, we've got 10 characters, technically more than that to cover today, but I will say that this goes up to very recent appearances, such as in the British English localizations of games like Mario Tennis Aces and Super Mario Party, where Birdo is frequently referred to with masculine pronouns. So it doesn't initially seem like Birdo has been censored in all regions, but for the case of the Americas, things are quite a bit different. Nintendo of America almost always uses feminine pronouns when referring to Birdo outside of certain instances, such as in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, where the character is stated to be one of indeterminate gender and is referred to using the it pronoun. Most of the time, Birdo was called a she in North American releases though. In Mario Kart 8, Birdo was on advertisements celebrating women in racing, which is clearly implying that this character is female, right? No, it's not right, since there seems to be no exact answer to the gender of Birdo, as it varies between which region you're living in and playing these Nintendo games in. If you're in Europe, for example, it seems like Birdo has always been male and likes to cross-dress and simply pretend to be a female. Whereas things are a lot different in the Americas, where Birdo is either implied to have made a gender transition or implied to have actually been female her entire life, which would completely contradict the information provided in her initial appearance in Mario Bros. 2. Kinda like what's happened to Sheik. Regardless of the intention, there certainly seems to have been some censorship here with Nintendo in the various regions, all trying to remove any ambiguity surrounding Birdo's gender in their own ways. But since they're all trying to simplify the gender situation of the character in their own way, it ends up complicating the situation even further, leading to seemingly endless debates from fans surrounding the subject. Next up on the list at the number 2 spot is Tharja from Fire Emblem Awakening. Now there have been quite a few censorships and controversial aspects to the Fire Emblem series. See the petting feature from Fates if you don't believe me. But in terms of just one character in particular to focus on in a video like this, would you really be surprised that we have to talk about Tharja? No, I don't think so. Basically, in the modern era of Fire Emblem, a large amount of focus was placed on the waifu aspect of the game, which hadn't been explored as much before. Especially in that game where Hector was the villain. Everybody knows my favorite main villain of the Fire Emblem series, Hector. Oh my god, I'm not gonna live that one down. But with Awakening, the series was certainly able to receive a massive amount of growth and popularity, and maybe the marketing of some of the characters in this game had something to do with it. So in the summer, Scramble DLC for the game was released, and obviously one of the main draws to attract people to buy it had to be seeing all their favorite characters in swimwear. A picture of when Tharja was changing into this outfit, though, was the point where Nintendo decided to draw the line. It seemed kinda arbitrary, but I guess this means they have standards? Maybe? Basically, when Tharja's backside was shown in this outfit for the Japanese version, the international releases said no to this, and they got this black cloth to be so clearly badly photoshopped over it. I don't know what was going on at the localization teams during this time, but it's very clear they must have been like, oh, hurry up, we gotta release this, but we've gotta change this picture first. Oh god, what are we gonna do? Oh, I know. Hey, there we go, problem solved. You see, with some of the entries on this list, when Nintendo decided to censor a character, they did so in a way that felt natural. But in this case especially, it definitely was not. And coming in at the number 1 spot on this list, and yes, I'm sure many of you saw this one coming, this is Jynx from the Pokemon franchise. This Pokemon is one of the original 151 introduced in Kanto for the Generation 1 games, and if you simply played the original Red, Blue, or Yellow, you may not notice too much significant or controversial about this character, since all of the sprites are displayed in grayscale, with you having to interpret more of the specific colors of Pokemon from other media that you view them in. In the anime and many other forms of media, Jynx's black skin was more apparent, which sparked outrage from fans about this Pokemon potentially resembling blackface. This being the use of makeup and the like to resemble someone who's black, and this is used as a very offensive form of material for a long time throughout history, which obviously would be unacceptable as an inspiration for any character. Nintendo and Game Freak's defense of Jynx was that she wasn't designed based off of blackface, and instead was based on the Japanese Gangoro fashion, which involves bleached hair, tanning, and heavily applying brightly colored lipstick. I can see the argument for that, but the only way that you would be able to completely commit to establishing that this character actually has no association or inspiration from this terrible subject was to remove anything that can be construed as such. This of course includes the black skin, now being changed to purple in all future appearances of the Pokemon. This is a great change to fully establish what the intention was, but it won't ever completely overshadow the grim history of the character in the eyes of fans who still want to bring it up to this day. I don't really want to say that Game Freak is eliminating Jynx from the games because that's not exactly the case, but Jynx over time has continually had a diminishing role in the series. In the character's debut generation, she was in a trio of sorts with herself, Electabuzz, and Magmar. This followed to Generation 2 where they all got pre-evolutions, but in Gen 4, this is where the change really showed. Electabuzz and Magmar now both got evolutions, being Electivire and Magmortar respectively, but Jynx was just left in the dust, now being effectively taken out of this trio, and it has now sort of become a duo between just those two Pokemon. It's unfortunate because even though this character has been changed, sometimes the cover-up just can't overshadow the past. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video and aren't subscribed, what are you doing? Click subscribe and you can stay notified when my newest Nintendo videos release. You can check out some of my previous videos on the screen right now, like my list of the decade's most controversial games if you're interested in another video just like this one. I hope you enjoyed this look into the past, and if you're sticking around with me for the future, I'll see you next time.